Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome back to the Authentically Blue podcast. I am your host, Carlson, and in today's episode, we are talking all about habits. Authentic Rambles is a segment of the podcast where I ramble about topics candidly. I discuss what's on my mind and my thoughts on this topic. I am not an expert in this field and have not perfected anything but enjoy learning about stuff. So join me as I share my thoughts in this moment and any tips and tricks on various topics. In this episode, I share micro and macro habits that I have integrated in my life. I also share tips and tricks that I have learned while accumulating these habits that have improved my life. And later on, towards the end, I dive into responses that I got on Instagram. So I put up a poll on my Instagram story, both my personal account and the podcast's Instagram account, which is all linked down below, if you want to join in the future. And I asked a couple of questions and I got a couple of good responses. So thank you for chipping in if you did. We will dive into that at the end. Also a quick side note. In the description box down below, I also have a timeline which I have included for this episode because I've realized that I ramble a lot, as you can tell by the nature and even the name Authentic Rambles. And I am aware that there are a group of people who enjoy the rambling. I am included. When I listen to other podcasts, I absolutely love that. But at the same time, I am aware that there are people who prefer straight to the point. If you are one of those people and you don't really care to hear the segment portion, which includes an interesting thing that happened this week, what I'm grateful for, and a word to the wise, you can skip straight to the main part and the timestamps will be linked down below. The segment portion of the podcast. An interesting thing that happened this week. My brother's school had a graduation and he was performing on stage. So me and my mom went to go watch him perform. He was amazing. But the interesting thing that happened is the different performances on stage. A few of the performances, one song in particular really stood out to me because I haven't heard that song in over 13 years. And I used to sing this song while I was in primary school a lot. It unlocked a childhood memory. I was like, oh my goodness, this is insane. I felt a wave of nostalgia and deja vu and happiness, and it was a weird feeling, but I relished it and loved it in the moment. So that's my interesting thing. What am I grateful for this week? Family. Oh my goodness, I am so grateful for family. I am appreciating every moment I have with them. And if you're listening, please go tell your loved ones you love them or give them a hug. You don't want to do it directly, show them you love them through your actions because actions do be speaking louder than words. And appreciate them while you're here because we never know what life has in store. My word to the wise for this week's episode is an extract from Melody Beattie's book, Journey to the Heart. If you've never heard of this book before, it's a book that has meditations for each day. Its aim is to help you free your soul. I know that sounds insane, but it's kind of amazing how insightful different daily reflections and meditations in the book. So I don't read it every day, but the days I do, I kind of enjoy it. Since we're talking about habits, I'll probably incorporate it into my habits. So here we are. The extract I'm reading is from November the 22nd, and it reads, "Open up to who you are. Stop criticizing yourself. Stop telling yourself everything you think, feel, want, and do is wrong, or at least not quite right. You've been holding back, censoring yourself for far too long. Your creativity, your intuition, the voices of your soul is the very voice you've been silencing. For many reasons, we learn to criticize and censor ourselves. We may have grown up with people who've stifled our inner voice, our wisdom, our knowledge of truth. Our sense of truth may have caused them to feel uneasy, so they told us to hush. It met their needs to keep us quiet. So we learned to hush ourselves. It was how we survived. No longer do we need to meet other people's needs. Not that way. We don't have to be afraid of ourselves or what we will find if we look inside. We don't need to run from ourselves. We don't need to hide or hush ourselves. We are creative, loving, purposeful beings." That's the end of the meditation. At the end of the meditation, there is a poem she's written, or it kind of looks like a poem, I guess it is. It reads, "It's time to open up to yourself, to your grandest dreams and aspirations, your real inclinations and desires, your wisdom and knowledge about what is true and what is real. Open up to who you are. Listen to yourself, express yourself, enjoy who you are, and you will find others enjoying you too." Now let's dive in, shall we? What are habits? I personally believe habits are intentional behaviors that we repeat over a period of time in a systematic manner. And if you really do think about it, our life is a full string of habits, things we do every day. By being aware of the habits we implement in our day and our life, we are more aware of our life, and I will touch on this in a little bit. The habits we have in our life are really important. In the beginning of creating habits in our life, they may seem tedious and annoying and long and frustrating, and that's why so many people don't stick to habits, whereas the key ingredient for habits is consistency. Don't get me wrong, I still struggle with certain aspects of consistency. There's parts of my life where I have mastered consistency, for instance, working out, going on walks, and so many other things, but there are things I still struggle with. So everyone's capabilities are different, and we give ourselves grace on this corner of the internet. Another thing I want to mention before I dive into the micro habits is I know people who do not like structure and routine and find it very mundane, find it boring, find it robotic, and just repetitive. On the other hand, I know people who absolutely love structure and can't live their life without it. And then there's some people who are in the middle, like me. I like knowing I have a structure, and I like having structure that's loose and not rigid. So it gives me the leniency to fall back and relax, at the same time have some accountability and direction in my life. And of course, if you're one of the other two people on either, find the balance and do what works for you. Micro habit. Number one, I'm going to say, is making your bed. Oh my goodness. I'm trying to get my brothers to master this skill because it's not something many people enjoy doing. But once you get into the routine of doing it, you feel accomplished early in the morning. And it's an easy task to do. It takes you less than 2 minutes and you feel like you've won the day already. That's how I personally feel when I do it. And it prevents you from going back in bed and being lazy and doing whatever. So make your bed as soon as you wake. Number two, having a consistent time waking up. Now, this is something I'm working on. It's been something I've been trying to do, but I am such a night owl. You can't clearly tell. I'm recording this podcast in the middle of the night. And it doesn't have to mean you wake up early. It just means you wake up around the same time every single day. Well, most days, it could be weekdays, and then weekends you relax a bit more. But having a consistent time that you wake up is good for your body, and a consistent time that you sleep. I think we all do this when we're younger, but then as we become adults, we kind of lose that. And I feel it's very important for our bodies, the structure and routine and the consistency. Number three is taking the stairs. I accredit this micro habit to my aunt, who I lived with for a while. She used to take the stairs every time we were in a train station in London or in her building, and she's just like, I'm busy, I have kids, and if I can't find a simple way to get my steps and exercise in, I'm gonna take it. And true to her word, she did become more fit and lose some weight while doing it, but it's one of those things where it may seem tedious and annoying in the beginning, but the more you do it, you kind of enjoy it and you get to places faster. So take the stairs when you can, instead of the lift or the escalator. If you have the time, make the time. Number four, which is super important to me, is nature. Oh my goodness. I am in love with nature, as you can, I don't know if you guys could tell from the episodes, but I grew up in a place called Kericho, and there was a lot of greenery and trees around me. And I just love nature. It's such a beautiful creation. By nature, I mean, I absolutely love the greenness, the trees, going outside, the sunrise, the sunset, the moon, everything to do with nature. Micro habits, whether it's going for a walk in the evening or just going outside and seeing nature, gets you away from the screen, gets you away from different things, and makes you feel grounded. If it's tricky to go out in nature, I know some people who have houseplants and absolutely love it. They find it soothing and relaxing. I do plan on doing this in the future. I actually had a houseplant at one point, but I don't anymore. It wasn't even a real one, it was a fake one, but seeing the green every day made a difference. It just boosted my mood. Lastly, for my micro habits, I have learning a new skill, because this is really beneficial for our brain. I know we're all in different stages in life. Some of you may still be learning, some of you may be working. Learning tends to be really boring sometimes, or it can be repetitive and annoying and frustrating, and it's just one of those things you have to do in life. Whether it's primary, secondary, university, whichever level you're in. As we're adults, very easy to stop learning. Having a skill or learning something different in a way that's fun to you is so important and amazing. Personally, a skill I'm actually currently learning, crazily enough, is knitting. I have wanted to learn how to knit since 2012. I kid you not, it's been 10 years. And when I landed in Kenya, I went to visit a couple of family members. And when I was in one family member's house, after I left, I was like, you know what? We used to live in these areas in 2012. Let me pop by and see if the knitting shop is still open. And I kid you not, the shop was exactly the same it was 10 years ago. How do I remember that? I have no idea. And I walked into the shop like, hey, I can't believe you guys are still open. I came in here 10 years ago buying wool and needles because I wanted to learn how to crochet. And the guy was like, wow, you must have been a kid back then. And all of this stuff. And I was like, yeah, I was pretty young. And I told the guy I want to learn something new and pick up the skill again. And he recommended, he's like, for a beginner, I would recommend this needle. I personally got the crochet. So I have the crochet in the needle. I'll post it on my Instagram for those of you who follow me there so you can see. And I have been knitting like crazy. And I love it because it engages my mind. It's meditative. It's therapeutic. I feel like my mind is still because I'm not watching a screen, or, I can talk to people while doing it and just relax. Plus, because I am a podcast junkie, I constantly listen to podcasts while doing it, or relaxing music because I do enjoy music too. So yeah, pick up a new skill and learn. It could be anything. It could be skating, it could be reading, it could be cooking. So many different ways to enjoy this life we live in. Macro habits. I have a couple of macro habits I'm going to include in this episode. I might do a part 2 later onwards. But number 1, I have gratitude. This is a huge one for me. I do this every single day, and I find it really beneficial to my mental health, my well-being, and how I am in general. I find practicing gratitude helps you appreciate life. The little moments in life, you get to pay attention to them as they happen. We're so used to focusing on things that go wrong or bad things in our life, and it's easy to be negative and be a pessimist. However, by practicing gratitude, this mindful habit helps center you, ground you, and makes you appreciate your day. The way I personally do it is at the end of each day, I open my notes app on my phone, and you cannot tell me that you don't have a notes app. Everyone has a notes app, whichever phone you're using. I mean, get a notebook if you have to. But we all have phones. Wherever you're listening to this, if you're listening to this on a laptop or an iPad or a speaker. Okay, a speaker is kind of different. But wherever you are listening to this, I'm sure you can find somewhere that has a notes application on whichever device it is. Open the notes app. Let's start from December. I usually do it weekly. So I put down December 1st, December 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. That's 7 days. Every Monday, every first, I write down, actually, I was going to open my notes up, but my phone just died. So I'm going to have to improvise from my head. I think, like yesterday, something I was grateful for, I would say, is movement. As you guys could tell in the update episode, I was sick for a while and I couldn't move around. So once I did start being able to move around, I have been appreciating it like crazy. As I said, health is wealth. Something else I could be grateful for is, yesterday I told an aunt of mine that my podcast was number 14 on the Kenyan chart, and she was ecstatic and she was like, I'm so proud of you. And remember when this podcast was just an idea in your head, and look at you doing it and motivating yourself and putting yourself out there. You're a butterfly who's flying. I was like, yes, a wholesome moment like that. I put that down in my notes. I spent a moment with my brother who's a toddler, and he is such a happy human being. May God bless him. And I wrote down in my notes app, I'm grateful for my brother. He makes me feel so wholesome and happy with how happy he is. I don't know, picture a baby happy. It's such an amazing feeling. Whatever it is, it could be a few days ago. I'll give you this, the last one I'm doing, because I can go on and on and on because I remember each one of them. I was watching a show. I think this one was The Flash. I stopped watching it a few years ago because someone ruined it for me and I forgot what the spoiler was, so I could go back and actually watch it. I just needed a mindless show that I didn't have to go in and out of. But I was watching The Flash while doing laundry in the house, and my brother joined me and was like, hey, can I watch an episode with you? I was like, it's 18 plus, but you can watch this one episode with me. And he really enjoyed it. And I was like, if you hear a bad word, you don't get to repeat the bad word. Thankfully, there were not many bad words, but small stuff. He's a kid. So he was like, why are they saying that? And I was like, bruh, relax. The next day I was asleep and I woke up and I could hear him telling our other brother and my parents, oh my goodness, I loved spending time with Kalson last night. We got to watch The Flash and she's such a cool sister and whatever. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then my other brother came up to me like, hey, when are we going to watch something? I was like, fine, we can only watch one episode and that's it, no more. But it's moments like that I write down, and then at the end of the year or at the end of the month, I reflect and look back, and I almost go back to those moments and just appreciate what happened because I can vividly remember how I felt in that moment. Gratitude is amazing, my people. Number 2, we have movement. I have talked about movement a lot. Oh my goodness. I sat in one position for too long and I feel like my leg is dead and there's a mosquito roaming around this room that I want to squish. But I'm almost done with the episode, so we will persevere through. Yes, movement. Movement is very important. I've talked about this a lot. And everyone's ability is completely different. So some people may be able to do a HIIT workout and other people may not be able to do that. Other people may enjoy walking. Some people may not. These different preferences and these different comfort levels. That's a disclaimer before we begin. And there's no need to feel ashamed or feel less than because you can't. I remember, this is a bit of a side note, as usual we ramble in these ramble episodes, but this year, I don't know which month it was probably February. I was doing a monthly yoga challenge, and I think she's called Yoga with Adrian on YouTube. She is amazing. So every day she'd go live or release a video and do it. So in the comments we'd all hold each other accountable, and I remember someone commenting saying, I haven't stretched in a very long time and I feel like I'm capable and I feel horrible. And I left a comment to this person saying, our bodies have different capabilities. For someone who does swimming or stretching or basketball or running, like our body, all it takes is practice. When I started working out, I couldn't do a plank for more than a minute and a half, and now I can definitely do that. So the more consistent you are with the habit, the easier it is to do. Okay, enough with the disclaimer. I hope that helps somebody out there. But movement is really important for our health, both physical and mental. There's so many benefits to it. We get endorphins. I mean, happy endorphins. It's amazing. For those of you who don't know what endorphins are chemicals that are released in our body when we exercise, and they make us feel good. In terms of our mental health, movement helps in terms of regulating our emotions. So you can work out if you're really happy or work out if you're really sad. If you're really angry and sad, by working out, it changes your energy because you get to focus on something and release these emotions. Plus you get the happy endorphins, and this is amazing. And lastly, in terms of movement, we get a sense of accomplishment. We feel proud of ourselves. We become more confident in life. You're holding you accountable. You get to trust you more and love you more. There's so many benefits to movement. So definitely get your body moving. Plus, movement is a gift. Not everybody in this lifetime can move. Some of us have been blessed with different capabilities. When you're older, you may not be able to work out as you are now. Who knows? There are people who have got into accidents or people who have challenges. And don't get me wrong, I have seen people who, let's say, don't have part of their body and they run marathons and do these things, and it's amazing. Like, that kind of determination is so admirable. So appreciate your body, get it moving, and see how that is for you. In terms of movement, as I said, experiment with what works for you. Like, don't just try out one type of workout routine and think, this sucks, this doesn't work for me. There's so many different types of workouts out there. There's yoga, there's sports, there's like running, basketball, swimming, there's walking, there's skipping, there's Pilates, there's yoga, there's hot yoga. There's cardio, there's HIIT workouts, boxing, swimming. I mentioned swimming. There's so many different types of workouts out there. It doesn't have to be expensive either. We went through a whole pandemic where things were locked down for months on end and people did manage to work out. I personally alternate between going to the gym and working out at home. There's so many amazing apps out there at the moment that you can work out with. YouTube, there's so many YouTube videos you can work out with. You can work out in your backyard if you have a backyard, or you can work out in a field near you or in your room. Like, there's literally workouts online that are for small spaces to get your body moving. And there really is no excuse other than laziness, because there are people who have 2 jobs and still get up early to work out. If something is a priority to you, you make it work. Full stop. Period. Okay, enough about movement. I feel like I've rambled about that a lot, but there are many benefits, as you heard me say. Journaling. The next macro habit I have is journaling, and this links to gratitude. Some of you may think, my goodness, journaling? Oh, hell no, I am not doing that. But there's different ways of journaling. When I personally got into journaling, I was kind of put off because I was like, I have to write in a diary. And I had a horrible experience when I was younger where I wrote in a diary and someone read my thoughts out loud and made fun of me. And it kind of scarred me. So I was like, I don't want to do this stuff anymore. And life happens. But I found ways around that. Took me years to get back into it. But as I have said before, I journal in my notes app. And I used to journal physically, especially in 2020. My birthday in 2020, I bought myself a journal and I journaled for 2 years straight. Well, a year and a half, where I would write down how my day was, what's happening. And there's so many ways to journal. I personally, this is what I do, but you can research different methods of what works for you. You can follow prompts. You can write down how you're feeling. You can write down what's gone bad. You can write down where you want to be, kind of like a manifestation thing. There's different ways. What I do is I usually tend to journal a lot when I have a complicated situation going on, or I need to understand my emotions. And these tend to be negative emotions. I do not journal when I'm happy. I do my gratitude journaling, which is different, but I do that on a daily basis. So my journaling, I just write down what happened, and I try to write what happened not in a personal way. Looking in my way, I try and get myself outside of the situation and write down like, this is what happened and this is how it made me feel. And with this, I get to unpack my emotions and my thoughts and see what triggered me. Why did I react the way I reacted? It just helps me be more self-aware. That's how I personally do my journaling. And journaling is important in so many ways. It helps us understand our emotions, emotions that we have not unpacked, emotions that we need to have processed. Journaling also allows us to reflect on our life and be self-aware, as I just said, because of patterns that may appear in your life. And when it's personal to us, we tend to be blindsided and not see the whole picture. Same thing with people who are around you. This is a side note, but I have different types of friends and people who I turn to for different situations. I'm sure you guys do too. But there are certain people who are more level-headed and check me when I am in the wrong. And I absolutely love that. I usually think, what would this person say? If you're listening, you know exactly who you are and I love you for it. I think, what would they say? What would they say about this situation? Like, I know I messed up here. Am I too deep in my feelings for this? Am I in the wrong? What is happening? So hopefully, if you do have someone in your life who you can turn to, who helps you be level-headed and checks you when you're wrong at the same time, chef's kiss. Go give that person a hug and appreciate them. Another thing about journaling is you don't have to do it daily. There's this stigma around journaling where you kind of have to do it every day. You have to have a cute journaling book and all this stuff. You don't have to do none of that. Find what works for you. If you want to do on your notes app, if you want to find an app, if you want to write it down, if you want a bullet journal, if you want to. There's so many ways and methods that you can figure this out, but find what works for you. And I don't know, maybe switch it around, kind of like the movement. We're all different. Give yourself grace and try something new. Who knows? It may help you in different situations. Oh, I was going to say a voice memo. I used to voice memo a lot before I started this whole podcasting journey. It clearly led me here, but you can use your voice memo or voice notes. Is it voice notes? No, the voice app on your phone to record your emotions and just unpack and delete it later on if you feel like it. Or you can type it out on your computer, or do it on your notes app, or do it in a book, or even record yourself and do it as a video journal to remember how it happened. I have seen a couple of YouTube videos where people do a heartbreak series where they document each stage of their heartbreak, from the immediate shock to them healing. And same thing with grief, same thing with, these heavy emotions or happy ones. It all varies. There's so many benefits to journaling, letting go of certain thoughts and emotions that allow us to get to know our day, relieving stress, seeing things from a different perspective. Plus, something that's absolutely beautiful that I love with journaling is you get to taste life twice. Once in the moment and in retrospect. And that's kind of fire if you ask me. Okay, another macro habit I have is you time. I am big on mental health, as you can tell. If you listen to my therapy episode, I touched on this quite a bit in terms of creating boundaries and doing things for you. So there's something called self-hug. I don't know if you've heard of this. Another aunt of mine introduced me to this, where you give yourself a hug when you're happy, proud, excited, or just need it in general. You just put your arms around yourself and you give yourself a nice cuddle. Sometimes we need that. When my aunt initially introduced this to me, I was like, I am not doing that. That is so weird. But I find myself doing that quite a bit, I'm not gonna lie, after I got over the awkwardness. And then I came across this thing called a morning self-hug, where you give yourself a hug in the morning and you check in with yourself. You can do this with yourself and with your partner or your loved one. If you're away from them, you can check in on them digitally. One of the beauties of technology. There's so many ways to do it, but in this aspect, I'm talking about you time. So a morning self-hug where you give yourself a hug. It doesn't have to be a physical hug. It can just be a check-in where you tell yourself, like, you're proud of yourself, what you want to achieve about the day. Just check in and see how you're feeling. It makes a huge difference just checking in. If you don't want to do that, you can prioritize your you time by taking time to do things that nurture you. For instance, taking time to do your skincare, your hair care, doing a stretch, having a shower, whether that's in the morning or night, and just appreciating yourself in these moments, whether it's having a dance, reading, walking outside. I personally love doing all this. Some days I don't do it. As I said, I'm a middle person while doing my routines, but other days I absolutely need them. I tend to do them on most days. Another macro habit I have is do things that give you passion. Find something that you're passionate about and do it. Life gets so busy and so chaotic and so loud and noisy and tiring. Finding something you're passionate about is so important, and you don't have to find it right away, but experiment with different things. This links back to the point of having or creating a new skill. For me, I'll give you my personal thing that gives me passion. Yes, you are listening to this right now. It's this podcast. I love researching topics for this podcast, editing the podcast. I mean, editing is like the best part of the podcast. Recording it, sharing it, hearing people's feedback, being creative with it. Whether that's like creating posts for social media or trying to figure out how I want the podcast to be, coming up with ideas and editing. Find what you enjoy and do that. It could be anything. It could be a type of exercise you're doing, a book you're reading, your relaxed time at the end of the day. Yeah, and these things alternate, but find something that you're passionate about and enjoy. Something like a guilty pleasure and indulge. This life is worth living. My last macro habit is meditation. I took a deep breath because breathing is part of meditation, and there's so many benefits to breathing. Breathing can shift your mood, whether you're stressed out or nervous or anxious or afraid. Just by breathing, you get to shift from one mood to another, and you get to ground yourself. And the importance of breathing, just centering yourself, it's one of the simplest ways to do it. So many of us don't even breathe correctly. I know that sounds wrong, but just do a quick search on how to breathe correctly by taking deep breaths. Like, breath is very important. My mind went somewhere gory, but I will not bore you guys with that. Yeah, there's so many benefits with meditation, being mindful. Meditation is part of mindfulness. That was it for micro and macro habits. I'm not going to dive into the tips and tricks of this podcast. By implementing habits, we inevitably avoid thinking more and making more decisions on things that don't need our energy and focus, so we can channel this into more important things. For instance, a habit you can implement for the gym, if movement is a priority of yours, is taking out your workout clothes the night before and just setting it near your bed or somewhere that's more accessible in the morning, and this will prevent you from choosing workout clothes in the morning. Same thing for picking your outfit for the next day. I've been doing this for so many years where I just pick what I'm wearing out for the next day, and it's just easier. So when I wake up in the morning, I just know this is what I'm wearing and I keep it moving. That's an amazing tip I learned. Another tip I have is eating the frog. I don't know if any of you have heard of this phrase. It is from a time management guru called Brian Tracy. I first came across this analogy in 2013, and the whole idea about eating the frog is doing the hardest task first thing in the morning or whenever you're starting your job. By eating the frog and doing the hardest thing, it has so many benefits because you're just tackling it head on and straight on. It helps you avoid procrastination. It makes you feel a sense of achievement and you're just getting shit done, which is amazing. Brian Tracy also talks about how if you have to eat two frogs, eat the ugliest frog first. So really look at your priorities and your list of the day and look at the hardest task that, okay, this is the most important thing I need to get done and the hardest thing, and do that task first. I've done this a couple of times. I'm still working on this. As I said, I'm not perfect, but it makes a huge difference. So try this out. Speaking of eating the frog, Tim Ferriss has a similar ideology to this, where he mentioned how doing a hard task first is worthwhile because it will pay dividends later onwards. So eat all your frogs in order of ugliness, and you're going to see all the rewards with time. Another tip I have for productivity is turning off your notifications for apps that you don't necessarily need. So for me, I don't have notifications on all my social media, and I don't have notifications on for other apps on my phone, like the game apps I have or miscellaneous apps I don't use often. I literally just have my WhatsApp because I have a lot of family on there, and I have my mail on. All the other apps, not really. I don't really have them on, and it's made a huge difference because I don't go on these apps as often, and I don't get distracted by other people's information and being bombarded on my phone all the time. And if I do want to see something, I get to click it on myself and have a look. That's an interesting tip I picked up during the last few years. Another tip I have is anchoring habits. Oh my goodness, this one is heaven. It just makes implementing habits so easy. So anchoring habits is bringing habits together, which allows you to be more consistent. For instance, we brush our teeth every day. After you brush your teeth, you immediately sit down and you go to your room and you meditate and breathe, or you just meditate. Another thing is, this one is something I used to do often a lot. I don't do this now. I'm going to pick this back up. But when you're praying in the morning, you can incorporate a stretch while just after you pray. And so your mind knows every time I'm praying, I have to do a stretch. Every time I finish brushing my teeth, I'm going to do a meditation or a 5-minute breath work or a 2-minute or a 3-minute, whatever suits you. But anchoring habits makes a huge difference. Planning your exercises ahead is another tip, or should I say trick, that I have learned, which is amazing. And I do this because sometimes I just get lazy and don't want to do certain workouts. But having picked out, okay, for 5 days a week, these are the workouts I'm doing and this is the time I'm doing it, and I just put it in my calendar and I see, okay, at this time, I need to do this because I don't have an excuse. I have the exercise planned out, I have my clothes ready, I have my timing set out. What excuse do you have, girl? Like, what excuse do you have? So that's an amazing one. Finding a minimum amount of times you're going to do that activity, whatever habit it is. For instance, movement. I tell myself, say, I'm working out for a minimum of 4 times a week, and I make sure I do this at least 4 times a week. And that just helps me be more accountable and incorporate this habit more easily. Another tip I have is your attention. Your attention span is super important because attention is life, really, if you think about it. Wherever your attention is determines the nature and the quality of your whole life. Gaining the ability to have some relationship or control of how you spend your attention is so important because how you process this emotion and direct it changes profoundly. and your ability to live the life you want to live regardless of the circumstances of your life. Whether you're happy or sad, having the ability to bring your attention where you want it to be is insanely important. I don't know whether that's a tip or trick, but I just felt important to include that in this episode because attention span is so important. It's really our life, our focus. It's similar to what I said earlier in terms of habits being, our life consists of habits we do over a period of time. Same thing with attention span, like the quality of your life depends on this. Okay, another tip is the 2-minute rule. If you've never heard of the 2-minute rule before, the 2-minute rule is there to avoid procrastination and help you accomplish all the small tasks you have in your life. If you can do an action in less than 2 minutes, do that action in this moment in time. For instance, a friend's birthday is coming up and we just became friends in the last year. So I asked him, when is your birthday? And he told me the date. And I put down on my priorities yesterday. Put this in your diary, in your calendar, so you get a notification on the day. And I was like, I'm just going to do this right now. And I did it in less than 2 minutes and I take that off and it's done. I don't have to stress out or think about that again. So if you can do a task in less than 2 minutes, just do it in that moment in time and get the task done. Then there's the 5-minute rule. And the 5-minute rule is a cognitive behavioral technique that is designed to help you overcome procrastination and be more productive. Essentially, all you need to do is commit to spending just 5 minutes on whatever it is you're procrastinating on. After that, you're free to stop at any point. You may get into the task and you may not, but at least you've done 5 minutes of it and you get to gauge, you get to gauge how long you need to take on the task, because most of the times the fear is just starting. I've had that so many times and I'm sure you have too if you're listening. So get a timer, set 5 minutes and keep it pushing. Also, on setting timers, another tip I learned is looking at a task and trying to figure out how long it will take you and then setting a timer for that time and doing it. That helps you be more accountable and just get the task done. Another tip I learned on timing is if you're procrastinating on doing something, count backwards. So if you're in bed and you don't want to get up, just think, okay, I'm going to count to 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and get up. Immediately you get to 1. And by doing that, it disrupts your brain from thinking, I don't want to do this right now, because you're counting backward, which is something we don't do often. It's a trick that's worked so many times. So try it out and see how that works. Okay, that's all for my tips and tricks for this episode. I could go on and on, but I had to condense and pick a couple of them. Now I am going to look at some of the Instagram responses I got and touch on them. So a friend of mine said, waking up the same time every day. Love hard. I do it regardless of my insomnia. And I touched on this before. This is so true. I currently don't do this in this moment in time, but it's a habit I plan on implementing from not tomorrow, because it's usually 4 a.m. right now. From Sunday, because Saturday I have a function I'm going to and it's going to be a long one. So from Sunday, I really do plan on sleeping and waking up at the same time, even if I just need that consistency in my life. Another person said, having awareness, you can be mindlessly doing things that are routinely bad. And that is so true, because look at me, for instance, with the sleeping. I know it's not good for me, but I keep doing it. And I am actively going to do something about this. The same person said, repetition seems like a chore at first, but then naturally part of your routine. Yes. I said this in the beginning. I literally said, when you're implementing a habit, it is so tedious. It can feel so tedious and tiring and frustrating because you have to actively think of it. The more you do it, the more it just becomes part of your routine and you do it without thinking. Thank you for saying this. Someone else just said, yeah. Yeah, man. Habits are important. And then someone else said procrastination, and it's a bad habit, but it's become a habit. Crying emojis times 3. I feel you, man. And the tips I gave on the timing may be really helpful. So the 2-minute rule. Okay, for procrastination, I'd say 5-minute rule. Set a timer for 5 minutes and keep going. Or pick up the Brian Tracy trick. Eat the frog first thing in the morning and just think of the consequences. This is something that helped me a lot. Okay, I think I'm going to do those responses for now because I want to wrap up and go to bed. That is it for this week's episode, my beautiful people. If you're interested in habits and want to implement more habits in your life, I hope these tips I have shared are of value. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to review on the Apple Podcast app. The Apple Podcast app is literally the holy grail of podcasts and allows other people to discover the show so they can enjoy it too. And I love hearing your thoughts on Instagram. Everything is linked down below if you want to reach out. I would love to see, for those of you who listen to my podcasts, whether you're on a walk or you're doing your chores or whatever, I would love to see you post on your Insta stories and tag me if you want to do that. If not, I understand. Drop a DM. Let me know your thoughts on the podcast and how you're enjoying it. And lastly, thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a beautiful week.